How do you express your spirituality from day to day? The customs and spiritual practices of the early pre-Christian pagan cultures were passed down from one generation to the next. These old ways were traditions for respecting and interacting with the gods and other spirit denizens, and they varied from one culture to another.
The Anglo-Saxon, for example, gave due offerings before a wreath, which was an image or symbol of the honored deity.
The early Roman honored his family's noumena, guardian spirits, at a household lararium, an object often resembling a small cupboard, which served as a home for those spirits. The early Greek began every ritual with an offering to the goddess Hestia. Each culture had its own customs. Many Paleo-pagans, whether Greek, Roman, or Saxon, were undoubtedly passionate and sincere in their piety, but their spiritual paths were largely a matter of circumstance rather than choice. The Celt and the Egyptian, the Saxon and the Greek, they all observed their respective customs because those were the only customs they were familiar and comfortable with. By contrast, contemporary pagans, almost without exception, intentionally choose the paths we follow. This is necessarily true for the first-generation pagan who was not raised as a pagan, but in today's multicultural environment, even children born into polytheistic households are usually encouraged to explore and appreciate other spiritual paths and to choose their own paths with knowledge and intention. Today's pagan, whether raised in a pagan home or not, makes a conscious decision about his or her personal spiritual journey.
This intentional choice may be one of the most significant distinctions between contemporary pagans and our Paleo-pagan ancestors.
We have expectations of our spiritual paths. For the majority of today's pagans, this includes the expectation of a connection between us and the earth, so much so that pagan spirituality has often been labeled earth religion or earth-based religion. Our ancestors had no need to reconnect with the earth. They were immersed in its whims and tides. In the pre-industrial world, the rural population was much greater than it is today. Urban centers like Rome and Athens were few and far between, and even in those ancient cities, the residents were far more directly affected by the Earth's mood swings. Today, in developed nations at least, we do not fear starvation if the local grain crop fails. For the majority of us, severe winter weather only means a higher than usual utility bill. We are still dependent on the earth, but not as directly as our ancestors were, and for the most part, this is a good thing.
Nevertheless, we have lost something in the process, and it is this disconnection from the natural world that has inspired many people to explore earth-based pagan spirituality.
Because of this intentional spirituality, pagans today often attempt to follow what the early Saxons might have called halsiddu, meaning healthy or holistic traditions. Halsiddu engages and integrates all parts of the self. Exactly how many parts there are depend on one's spiritual paradigm. As a Saxon pagan, I expect halsiddu to engage my rational thought, stimulate my memories and emotions, arouse my source of inspiration, balance my physical body, and fortify my identity. In the Saxon tradition, these are all equally important parts of the self. Pagans who follow other paths will have other definitions of the self, of course. For the sake of simplicity, let us make use of a popular contemporary paradigm and define halsiddu as the integration of body, mind, and spirit.
I use the Old English term halsiddu for intentional pagan spirituality because I follow a Saxon path, but a Roman pagan might call it the vetra valens, worthy traditions. An Icelandic pagan could call it heildren venjur, holistic habits.
The name is not important. By any name, intentional pagan spirituality helps us reconnect with the earth and integrate all parts of the self into one whole being.